All right. We are going to start this podcast about filmmakers. I've been a student of film my whole life. I started as a kid, just obsessed with it, absorbing everything I could, really disappeared into movies, movie watching, enjoying the experience as someone sitting in the audience and just kind of allowing it to transport me to a different place. As I've grown, I've learned the technical aspects of filmmaking. I went to film school. I learned the inner mechanics of what makes these things work. So I went from just kind of an observer, enjoying it on that very audience member level, to somebody who now has kind of sees the guts of it, and maybe that's stripped away a certain level of the mystery and the enjoyment. I would say a lot of the enjoyment is stripped away. I don't watch as many movies as I used to watch, but it was a time in my life when I really needed that kind of a thing, and I think a lot of young people probably can relate to that. Before you're overwhelmed with responsibilities and life really kind of grabs you and starts pulling you away from these things. Film can seem like a really big part of your life, I guess, depending on what your social life looks like. But so anyways, I say all that to kind of frame my perspective as someone who, like I said, just sat and let a movie speak to me. And I tried to understand when I watched what the filmmakers were trying to communicate. I tried to understand, what are they trying to say through all of this? Like, what's their worldview? How did they grow up? I think that's the most interesting part of watching a movie made by an auteur, somebody who lets every aspect of their personality kind of infuse the work in a raw way, as opposed to like a Steven Spielberg, who does personal films but also does movies that are supposed to be removed from him. I'm sure he has things that he identifies with in every movie he makes, but those could be everyman things. They could be things we all have experienced and all have identified with. I guess I should kind of get to my point. I want to talk about Vincent Gallo. He's unabashedly Vincent Gallo. No matter what he makes, you're seeing Vincent Gallo. He can't hide from who he is. And maybe he's tried to hide from who he is. I think a lot of the best artists do kind of run from their own personality, but no matter what they make, they can't hide it. It is just them. And so far, he hasn't made an E.T. or anything in that Spielberg vein that can kind of be, removed from it in that way. His films have been very personal. So as someone who likes to watch and learn about the people and their viewpoints and what they're presenting to us, and then reverse engineer that back to why would they do that, is a very interesting case study to watch a Vincent Gallo movie. And I should say the Vincent Gallo movie, Buffalo 66, because he made The Brown Bunny as well, but that's one that you don't really hear much about because it was kind of written off in a way. So yeah, we're going to talk about, I suppose, Buffalo 66 more than anything else. But I don't know. Let's think about this. The first thing I remember seeing about Buffalo 66 was the trailer, which, if you've seen it, right off the bat, it's different. So I think that might have been the first real unabashedly independent film I'd ever been exposed to that was really just art. The trailer wasn't cut in a way that made narrative sense. It was all aesthetic, it was music, it was vibes, and it really intrigued me as someone who was trying to absorb more and more. I think that may have been the appeal of film to me in my younger age, was first an escape and then trying to expand out, right? You see the things that your parents kind of expose you to, and then you learn the values of your family, and that kind of builds a little fence around a certain perimeter of area that you inhabit in your younger age. But then if you end up accidentally seeing something you're not supposed to see, or you resonate with a movie that kind of it exists outside of that area, that can be intriguing. And that was, for me, intriguing because it expanded my territory of what was possible, what ways of thinking were possible. And so I looked for more and more. And so when you see something like Buffalo 66 come onto the scene as someone who was only exposed to, like, you know, standard fare, that promise of it being just totally different was very intriguing. And I think, not to get too far ahead of myself, but this is kind of a problem now. Maybe it's just me in my older years getting a little more cynical that I've seen everything, but it really does almost feel like there's no stones left unturned in art. Maybe it's just people now. Maybe we are just gravitating towards certain things, but it would make sense that the more counterculture alternative stuff that exists, that's less opportunities for future groups to then be alternative. There does seem to be a limited amount of alternative counterculture that can exist in the world, and I feel like we've almost come to the point where being counterculture is so played out that people are going the opposite, is kind of inverting, and now to be clean cut and play by the rules and present family values and things, that's almost becoming the new counterculture. That we see that and we almost go, wow, that's fresh. What is that? I haven't been exposed to enough of that, because in a way we're kind of polluted by these alternative things. Anyways, Buffalo 66. Unabashedly Vincent Gallo. Okay, let's say I got it and I put it in after seeing that trailer, and it did not disappoint at all. First observation, he's a dick. He's a huge asshole, and some would say, probably most would say, he's abusive. And it's really strange because as a viewer, and I know this is kind of an autobiographical movie, and I know he picked his co-stars and he picked the framing and he wrote and he did all of these things. So to see a man present himself in this way, it almost doesn't even appear to be acting, and he's being an asshole. And it gives you the impression that Vincent Gallo as a person may not see his own behaviors and mannerisms in the way that we, the viewer, do. It's presented in that way, I think. Maybe you let me know what you think after you watch it, or if you've seen it. Is he aware that he's painting himself as an asshole, or is it just kind of what he knows and he's presenting it and letting us kind of... I should back up. I do think I want to give him enough credit to say I think he knows. I think he's smart. I think he's funny. Maybe he's just really brave. He's intelligent and he's uncompromising and brave, which is probably the most important component that a auteur with very little money making a movie with, let's say, not a, what do you call it? it's not the kind of movie where when you read it on paper, it's automatically going to be a crowd pleaser. It's not going to automatically draw people in on paper. It's what he brings to the story. I'm going to go off on another tangent real quick. Maybe I learned this from him and others like him, but I never think, what's the plot? People always say, what's the plot? You got to have this plot, the plot. And it's like, people like Vincent Gallo could take anything. And if they can find themselves or write it from their perspective, it could be the most boring plot in the world on paper. But I want to live in his head at least for an hour and a half. And it's escapism, because it's such an almost autistic way of seeing things. But it's so unique that you can't help but be in awe and reverence. There's a giddiness to seeing it and going, oh wow, this is real lived in shit, and it's so different, and it's funny, and all of these different things, and I don't really care what the plot is. At least I certainly didn't at that period of life, because I'm absorbing so much from watching this guy. And I don't know if I'm absorbing in the sense of making solid judgments as much as I'm just absorbing a perspective that's being presented to me that I've never seen before. So yeah, to sum that up, plot I don't think is everything. I think viewpoint is more important, and I think people sit and labor over these plots when they want to get into the film or any creative business, and they're told and drilled into their head, like, what's the plot? I need to hear this hook in like 2 seconds. Tell me what's the plot. And it's like, if I think to a certain point, to a certain extent, and you can make it on plot alone, but I think from my perspective as someone who admires these kinds of artists, you have it, like Vincent Gallo, or you do not have it. And a Vincent Gallo can take anything and he can turn it into a Vincent Gallo film that I would enjoy watching because I enjoy Vincent Gallo. Or you're a plot guy who, hey, you may make something entertaining and you might make $1 bajillion doing it. Let's not totally denigrate plot people. If you want to make a ton of money, go study plot, refine, hone, cut stuff down, pare it down, whatever, and make it as palatable as possible, which, by the way, we're not going to do with this podcast. Or you be a Vincent Gallo, you make exactly what you want to make, and either it hits or it, like the Brown Bunny, it totally misfires. But hey, I respect both attempts because I like what's up here. Okay, I like what's up here, and I don't think there's as much integrity in trying to predict the way your audience is going to receive something as there is in just do the thing that you want to do. There are people that will want to watch that. So anyways, he's unabashedly Vincent Gallo in Buffalo 66. He's verbally abusive. He kidnaps Christina Ricci, and then she ends up falling in love with him, which, keep in mind, Vincent Gallo wrote all of this.
Shut up! Shut up!
You're hurting me.
He wrote that he got out of jail, so he's kind of a dirtball. He's verbally abusive. He kidnaps her, but then he starts to almost emasculate himself, I would say. Like he forces her to drive. He doesn't drive the car.
Hey, 1, 2, 3, get out of the car. Get out of the car. And I'm watching you. I'm watching you. I'm watching you.
He
Don't make that
too
face.
much.
Don't
She's
make that face.
laughing at him when he's
Hurry up!
chattering in the passenger seat. He's berating her and being on paper, and as you watch it, verbally abusive. But it plays in a way where you don't take him incredibly seriously. She doesn't either. You're kind of like, this guy's all bark in a way. It's so different. It's so different. It gives me shivers just thinking about it. It's brave. So he kidnaps her, and then he takes her to meet his family, which is the whole thing. You almost don't even think that this is really going anywhere. It's so like you're just like you're in this moment with him, and he's looking for a bathroom, and then he kind of wanders through and he sees a pretty girl in her ballet class, and then he snatches her and throws her in a car. You're like, is there any plot plan or anything? Or you continue watching because you're like, this is just very strange. And then you find out he wants her to play his girlfriend, and he's going to take her to meet his family. And then you're kind of like, okay, so here's the plot. So okay, maybe there's a stronger plot than I gave it credit for. That's that. If you told me man gets out of jail, kidnaps girl from ballet and forces her to pretend to be his girlfriend, that's fucked up enough. I may just say, all right, unique. That's a unique plot. I'll bite. So anyways, yeah, he takes her to meet his family, and then you find out why he is the way he is, which again is written by Vincent Gallo, remember. So he's, as the artist, I have to assume, referring to his own personal experience. The things that he shows, the way he shows his family being abusive to him is in a way that I have a hard time believing it's written and not experienced. And again, you're just gonna have to watch the movie if you haven't seen it. But it feels personal. Obviously, it feels specific. It's not like the most extreme abuse, but it's enough that it turned him into what he now is. The whole affair that he's dealing with his family, I won't go all into the details, but it feels like small in a way. And I guess he is kind of small in the scheme of things. Maybe that's kind of what you get, what I got walking away from the scene with his family, with Christina Ricci playing his girlfriend, who she actually ends up coming to his defense. She sees right away, okay, this family is kind of wild. They're kind of crazy, and they're kind of berating him and belittling him and making him feel unloved. And you see that maybe he never really got much affection from these people who just live in their own heads. They're just kind of living in their own little world and oblivious to the shitty way they're treating each other. And then you start to feel that there's this really emotional guy in Vincent Gallo, in the character in the movie, but also Vincent Gallo as a person. This really deeply fucked up, deeply suppressed, buried beneath all of the insults and the verbal abuse is a guy who's been stepped on and feels like shit, and he's just trying to... What's he trying to do? I don't know. He doesn't know. So, but she comes to his defense. And interesting point. I have followed Vincent Gallo personally, like on his various social medias, his website where he tried to sell his own semen, boasting that he had a really large penis and that if any woman were to use his semen, that the child would be endowed with his large dick. Again, is it art, performance art? Is he serious? Your best guess is as good as mine. I have to say, maybe I think it's a joke, but it was there for sale, so who knows? But anyways, I've seen and then I follow him on his Instagram, and you kind of see the little counterculture, subculture of girls who follow this guy, who's by all measures kind of a cretin, but they love him. They're just like Christina Ricci in the movie. He's almost got that maybe Charlie Manson type appeal. I don't want to say that because Charlie Manson's a psycho, and I love Vincent Gallo, and I'm sure he's an awesome, I think he's a good guy. But it's so hard for me to really rationalize because he is this combination of verbally abusive, get away from me, push away people intentionally, but he speaks his mind. But then at the same time, for whatever reason, it like really resonates with girls. They just find him so sexy. Just like in the movie, it almost seems like, and he wrote it, Christina Ricci ends up falling for him and trying to penetrate his protective layer. And maybe that's what it is. He's got that strong, he as an artist knows he has a strong protective layer, and Buffalo 66 was his way of trying to show that in film. And let's talk about the aesthetic real quick, because the scenes with his family, there's like he brings up a memory at the family table, and none of it's lit in a really like palatable way, but it is palatable in the way that it's not like what you're used to seeing. It's very beautiful in its kind of grungy way. And then this picture within a picture that's a home movie appears, and it starts to come out of the center of the frame, and it's him as a little kid, and it's his family memories playing in the middle of the screen. So we get to see literally what happened. And then it disappears, and his family reflects on it. Like, no, that's wrong. You didn't. That didn't happen to you, and all this stuff. But we literally saw it. We know. Or like, they go downstairs, and his dad wanted to be a musician, and Christina Ricci asks the dad to sing her a song, and then the light completely changes when he picks up the microphone. He gets spotlit, and he's in his own world. Fools rush in. I guess I keep repeating this. Where angels... I'm not trying to be rude here when I say autistic. I just don't know how else to describe it when someone has such an insulated view of reality. When you can zone in so strongly on one particular thing where you almost disappear from the moment and you are in your own imagination. And that's what appears to be happening to the dad when he starts to sing. He sings, and then his voice becomes this beautiful voice, and the music punches up, and it becomes his image of himself as a musician. And for a moment, the movie no longer exists. The movie fades into the background, and this image of the dad, it becomes enormous, and it dominates the entire thing. And you just kind of watching and going, wow, okay, we're just like sucked into this thing. And it plays out. And then it's been a while, Christina Ricci asks him to sing another one. And he says, no. And then she's like, oh, come on, because they're having fun. And he goes, I said no, and he starts freaking out.
Please, just one more song.
No more! Okay?
And then you're like, whoa, there's the abusive father. There he is. Like, got real uncomfortable. So yeah, there's like these beautiful moments like that you just have to kind of see and watch and see how they affect you. Because I can only speak from my experience that thing that I'm referring to about being sucked into your own moment so much that it dominates the entire frame, and you push that on your audience. I've tried so hard to think that way for my own personal projects, like theatrical, I guess, like shift the light, spotlight somebody, kick that music up, like this is drama, this is not reality. But when you're getting into the psychology of people and you go inside of their heads, if you can visually represent that, for me, that's what a movie is. And maybe that's a crude way of doing it, but it's very effective. And I love it. And later it happens again with Christina Ricci, where she starts dancing at the bowling alley. And again, we're subjected to this like cut scene of her just in her own universe as this pretty tap dance girl, like living out her moment. And you're just like, all right, I buy it. Like, let's watch this shit. This is cool. Like it just fucking works. And rarely does it work, because I would venture to say rarely is it authentic. Usually it's just stylistic decisions, like that would be cool. And in Vincent Gallo's case, I don't think that's it. I don't think it would be effective if that was the only reason he was doing it. I think he felt it, and so he did it, and it worked. Everything about this movie works to me. There's not a single thing that doesn't work. And it's not like you can say it works because it's flawless. And I hate that term flawless, because who fucking decides what's flawed and what's a flaw? Like there's this like consensus based code of criticism of like, oh, that's good, that's not good, this works, that doesn't work. It's like art just exists, and Vincent Gallo's movies just exist, and he has had many people try to replicate his, try to turn this into a formula that can be replicated. So in that instance, Buffalo 66 becomes the archetype for what follows. And so by that description, none of the film could then be considered a flaw. It is the archetype. Therefore, if you're judging something against it, that movie, whether it adheres to the Buffalo 66 archetype or not, would be successful or not successful based on the comparison to the original material. So I guess my point is that if it's original, like Buffalo 66 and other movies we will discuss in future episodes, if it is a original piece of art, whether it works or not is going to be on an individual basis. But every decision was made for an artistic purpose. So therefore, working for you or not, it is a decision that was made, and therefore I think it is successful, right? There's nothing wrong with Buffalo 66, I guess. That's what I'm trying to say. Nothing about it. If I don't like it, that's me, right? If I don't enjoy it, but he put himself into the movie. So I don't know. What are you going to say? Oh, the scene was too long, or too much family drama, or I didn't feel the tension between the family. He should have cut down the dialogue here. Maybe that's how it played out. That's what he wanted to show. Like, maybe this is my point I'm trying to make. I don't think we as filmmakers or artists or anybody, I don't know, I can only speak as a filmmaker or artist, we shouldn't let other people dictate the decisions that we make in the name of art. You just have to do what's true to you, and if it doesn't work for somebody, that's on them. So that's I guess where I'm going with that. Yeah, so Buffalo 66. What else? I mean, there's a brilliant use of the music by the band Yes. I didn't even know Yes before I saw Buffalo 66. Again, I saw this when I was like a little kid, and I'm like, what is this music? Who is this guy who's absorbed all of this shit I've never heard of and used it in such a beautiful way, and built his own language, or been tapped. I can't say he built it. Maybe he found it somewhere where he grew up.Maybe this was like, Yes was a band that a bunch of his friends listened to, or the artists that he hung out with. And there's this whole secret undercurrent counterculture thing that I wasn't exposed to, but then he's the guy who's kind of letting me in on the secret. And that's the appeal of these kinds of movies. You're like, what, like, teach me, show me, what is this? What's going on? Like, and then that becomes your common parlance when you're talking to other people, like, my musician friends that I hung out with, and I'm like, you seen Buffalo 66? And they're like, oh, fuck yeah. And we talk about The Heart of the Sunrise, the song that Vincent Gallo uses, and they're like, dude, I fucking love that song. And they start playing it, and like, we bond over that because it's a shared feeling. It's not even, it transcends like other things, just like having a really strong reaction to something transcends opinions, or it's felt. And like, that made the hair on my arm stand up, and it made the hair on your arm stand up too. And that to me tells me that we have common ground that is deeper than other things. So yeah, the music, Heart of the Sunrise, which Vincent Gallo apparently is a progressive musician himself. And I guess that's where I wanted to go next, is that this guy is a artist of many mediums. He's a painter. He hung out with Basquiat. That's how you say it. He hung out with a bunch of painters, he plays music, he writes and directs, he acts. I saw him in movies with his little moody eyes before I saw him in Buffalo 66, where he was his unrestrained self. And, you know, he is an artist through and through, and he's an uncompromising artist. And, I mean, that's got to be all of that art experience kind of swirling around to inform this one incredible, you know, accomplishment as a self-defining piece of art is just outstanding to me. It's successful in the sense that it is absolutely unique to him, and try as you might to replicate, you're not going to be able to do it. The best you can replicate is to say he was unabashedly himself, and so therefore if I want to do that, then I have to be unabashedly myself and make something totally different from what he made. And yeah, so that's Vincent Gallo. And then the Brown Bunny, we can maybe talk about that later. I think he probably again tried to make a really unique. He didn't try to make it unique. He tried to make something that he felt, and it just wasn't as resonant and successful as Buffalo 66. People say it's slow. People say it didn't add up to much. Maybe a criticism that could be lodged against it was, this happens, as I've observed, to artists who have made something. They tend to then, as they continue, get more into their own head and put less on the page for the audience. And I don't know why that happens. But I think maybe it gets to their head a little bit that they communicated so well with their audience and it resonated with so many people what they did. They don't really understand what exactly resonated with the audience. They just know they were effective. And so that gives them permission in their own head to then go ahead and go further with that. And like, well, that worked. And like, you know, that was really personal, obscure shit. So I'm going to go even more obscure and they're going to follow. They're smart enough to get where I'm going. And you just I think they kind of end up giving in to their better senses in their earlier work told them like, try to connect a little bit more, I guess. There may have been an attempt in Buffalo 66 to present in a way that, you know, the lowest common denominator would at least still get something out of the film. You know, the idea that it needs to be intelligible for people to follow. Sometimes I think what happens, this kind of goes back to an earlier point, is that you have, you know, if you take a guy like Vincent Gallo and you give him a plot, like if you gave him E.T. and you said, Vincent Gallo, take this movie and do what you feel like E.T. should be, but try to make it E.T. Like, consider that you want it to be a family movie, but it's okay, like, be a Vincent Gallo about it. And I think even if you didn't tell him that, what you're going to get is going to be Vincent Gallo, and it's going to be fucking wild. And whether it's successful with people or not, I don't know. But that attempt, at least, on the part of the artist to rein it in a little bit is what makes it really reach. It's like you got one person or part of his brain pulling it back for people, and then the other part's pulling against that, and it's getting further away. And that duality, that fight to keep it contained, and then the fight to like, no, but I gotta let it be, breathe a little bit, and that fight against order and chaos, I suppose you would say, is what makes it so compelling. It's like propulsion, you know, like the swinging, the back and forth, that is movement, it's propulsion. And that's what I think gives it its a vibrancy to anybody who watches it and goes, oh, this feels like electricity. It's because there's that there's that propulsion that exists. But when one side gets further away than the other side, and you let it you kind of like a balloon filled with air, and you just release it and it goes and shoots away. That's kind of what happens when they're not checked at all. With a more mainstream example, I think you could say like George Lucas, who made Star Wars. And when he made Star Wars, he had all these far-fetched he was a no shortage of ideas, let's say that. But he had people who were like, George, maybe it should be a little like this. And like he begrudgingly took their advice. And it's not, they could have never made Star Wars. So I'm not trying to give them too much credit for being the people who were like taming him. But he needed to be tamed to be understood really by people the best that he could. Like that forcing, that attempt to control, not smothering, because that happens too, like with David Fincher when he tried to make Alien, where the producers and studio just smothered the shit out of him while he tried to make Alien. That they can absolutely kill a film in its crib, but an attempt, like if they're getting away, to drag them back and then let them go a little further and then drag them back and then let them go, that is healthy, and I think that produces the best films. And I will give another example. Paul Thomas Anderson, in his early work, whether it was, I don't know, producers, friends, or just himself trying to make his films somewhat palatable and connect with the audience, he made amazing movies, and you can trace where it started to, for me, go off the rails in terms of I don't want to watch it anymore. Where you become so making it for yourself in the sense where it's so insulated from connection. You're out here, and you think, well, if you want to join me in this, you can, but I'm going to make this. And I'm not really going to offer you an on-ramp to enjoy it. And in fact, I may intentionally kind of dangle the rope in various places and kind of frustrate you on purpose. It does seem like they do that with some of these films, like from P.T. Anderson, his newer work. Like The Master is where I started to see it kind of go into this direction of like, I know it almost felt, you would say, pretentious. It almost feels like he thought, I'm smarter. And I don't want to mischaracterize P.T. Anderson. It could also just be that he reached that point in his career where nobody wanted to advise him anymore, because he is a guy who pulled the Buffalo 66 effect with like 4 consecutive fucking movies, maybe 5, that were just like, that I've never seen before, that I've never seen before, that I've never seen before, and that I've never seen before. So we can't really tell you too much. Like, we don't know what you're doing and how you're doing it, but every time you do it, it's different than what we've seen. So just do what you want to do. And that license to do what you want to do is where it kind of, they kind of spin out in their own little la la land. And, there's parts of his newer films that I enjoy and I can enjoy, but there's nothing like those early movies. And The Master was the last one where I'm like, I like it, I get it, it's cool, but it's almost like I'm checking my watch, because like you're doing something maybe fun for yourself, but I don't really feel like you really give a fuck if I like it or not. And I don't know if that's the case or not. And you know what? He's made enough amazing movies that he can spend the rest of his career doing whatever the hell he wants, and I'll just appreciate him for the earlier stuff. But yeah, so that's how, maybe that's from my perspective how that could happen. Maybe you have some ideas about how directors kind of end up losing the thread, I guess you might say. Maybe they've run out of ideas. Maybe he just had this aching story for Buffalo 66 that he just needed to tell, and that was the movie he needed to make. And then after that, he's like, I got to make another one. That was so good. And then he's like, I don't really know what to do. I told my aching story, and I kind of wonder if I were making movies if I would be the same, you know, a one hit wonder who just kind of tells the story that you were born to tell, and then people see your perspective, and then after that you're like, okay, now where do we go? Quentin Tarantino, I mean, Pulp Fiction, in my opinion, was the kind of it announced him on the scene as someone who saw things and presented them in a different way. And although I've enjoyed his movies after that, because he is a really tight story, they're great stories, good plots, right? But everything after that is a Quentin Tarantino film, and we already know what a Quentin Tarantino film is. You're not watching one and being like absolutely surprised by what you're seeing, like the first time you experience Buffalo 66. You're like, what the fuck is this? I've never, like, the whole movie, you're like, good God, I've never seen anything like this. And just like Pulp Fiction for a lot of people, like, you like, this is what you can make a movie like this? Is so strange. And then once that's established, it's like the antagonist, the anti-establishment guy, like Tarantino, like all of these artists, the guy who's like, I see things a little different, and here's the way we see things, and they come in and they show us their film, and we're like, you know, some people are like, that's poison, that's heresy, that's terrible, and then but then other people are like, I really like that, that's cool, we should like accept this in our little world, and you know, it should inform the way we make things going forward. And then we, you know, deliberate as a society if it's a big enough piece of art, and it becomes assimilated, and then our little world grows a tiny little bit bigger, and then the guy who is out here, he's now in here, and he's like, fuck, I never wanted to be in there. I liked fighting it on the outside, but now I'm in here, and now I got to figure out what to do, how to get out again and come back. And I don't think that's a very easy thing to do. So yeah, Buffalo 66. I'd love to see more from Vincent Gallo. I heard he made a movie, in 2016? Let's see, I'm looking right now. No, 2010 and 2013. He's made movies that he hasn't really released. You have to find a way to see them. That's insane to me. That's so, like, not making sense with the way movies are typically presented. And it's the same thing with Crispin Glover. He does that too. He, like, you know, you have to go to, like, watch them on tour. He only plays them where he goes on tours with them, and you can't see them otherwise. It absolutely makes them more mysterious and interesting, for sure. Another director we'll probably talk about later is Harmony Korine. And I would say a couple really great movies, but he has that mystique factor. It's like the movie almost markets itself, because you're like, you start to hear about it and you start to see images, and they're really like wild, and you're like, well, how do I get to see it? How can I see it? You know? And maybe if you're young, you won't really get this, but back in the day, you actually had to get a physical copy of a movie. Like, you couldn't just look up The Brown Bunny online. You had to find a place that carried it and bring it home and watch it. And it was even harder with the Harmony Korine movie and all of these obscure directors. And now all of these obscure directors, you can just search them and watch them. But back then, it took effort to find the movie. And part of that was the marketing. Part of that was almost like this viral marketing to young people like myself who were looking for almost like crack, like more and more different, you know, perspectives in cinema. Like, how much more subversive can you find? You got to dig, you got to find these movies, and you got to find a way to get them. And I think there's definitely was a market more so for that back then than there is now. And maybe as a young person today, you'd watch Buffalo 66 and you wouldn't really see it the way I saw it. So I'd be interested to hear, if you're a younger person and you check that movie out, and tell me what you think. So, yeah, I guess we can call it a day with that. Thank you for tuning into my diatribe. We'll continue with another director next time. And I think I want to talk about... I toyed with the idea of P.T. Anderson. I toyed with the idea of why Rushmore is the best Wes Anderson film, and how I view his career trajectory. And I know he's a pretty mainstream. He should not be mainstream. Wes Anderson is not even remotely mainstream, but I mean, I suppose he is. But I have a perspective on his rise because I remember when Rushmore came out and what that movie meant to me, and then everything subsequently that came after that kind of, well, we'll talk about it. We could talk about Todd Solondz. I would love to talk. I did a thing a while back about Todd Solondz, but he's another subversive director. We could do that. We could do Harmony Korine. We could do Larry Clark. Yeah, we'll figure it out. You can drop a comment and tell me who you want to talk about next time. All right, thank you. Bye.